The galaxy had long forgotten the first wave of human colonization. In those early centuries of exploration, ships set out in every direction, carrying men and women who dreamed of fresh beginnings among the stars. Most colonies thrived under Earth's distant guidance, but a few expeditions vanished without a trace. Records marked them as losses, tragic accidents in the dangerous void. Over time, they faded into myth, footnotes in dusty archives. One such fleet had departed with high hopes, bound for a system rich in promise. Its 5 colony ships carried thousands, each family eager to leave Earth's crowded orbit for a new dawn. But somewhere along the way, something went wrong. The fleet disappeared from known star maps, never reporting back. Earth mourned briefly, then turned its attention elsewhere, confident the colonists had perished in the silence of deep space. Yet the fleet had not died. Instead, it stumbled upon an uncharted star system, shielded by dense nebulae and gravitational storms that bent. Light and scrambled signals. Cut off from Earth, stranded with dwindling supplies, the colonists had a choice: surrender to despair or fight to survive. They chose to fight. The first decades were brutal. The planets in the system were harsh, many unfit for comfortable settlement. The colonists stripped their ships for parts, turning hull plating into shelters and engines into crude factories. Families learned to grow crops in soil poisoned with strange minerals, recycling every drop of water, every breath of air. Starvation claimed many, disease even more, but the survivors grew stronger. They learned the patterns of their hidden sun, the violent storms that swept its skies, and the treasures buried in its asteroids. Generations passed. What had begun as a desperate settlement hardened into a civilization. The descendants of those first colonists called their home Solara, after the bright star that gave them life and hardship in equal measure. They forged a culture unlike anything Earth could have imagined. To them, survival was not merely a necessity, but a creed. Every child learned to work and fight. Every citizen carried both the tools of trade and the weapons of defense. Weakness was not tolerated, but neither was cruelty. Their unity came from shared struggle, and their pride came from enduring what others could not. Over the centuries, Solara advanced in isolation. Without trade or outside guidance, their technology grew along unconventional lines. They learned to mine entire asteroids for resources, crafting engines that could burn on fuels considered unstable by galactic standards. Their weapons were crude in design but devastating in effect, optimized for maximum efficiency with minimum resources. Perhaps most importantly, they developed adaptive war programs, artificial intelligences bound to their fleets, designed to calculate strategies in real time against any enemy. While the galaxy forgot them, the Solarans never forgot the galaxy. They remembered the world their ancestors had come from, even if they could no longer reach it. Stories were passed down about the greater stars beyond the nebulae, filled with strange civilizations and endless opportunities. Children were told that one day Solara would not only survive, it would rise. That day came when the storms shifted. For reasons their scientists could not explain, the great nebula that had long hidden their system began to thin. Signals from the wider galaxy, faint and distorted, reached Solara for the first time in nearly a millennium. The people listened to voices speaking in unfamiliar tongues, carrying news of empires, councils, and ancient powers. To the Solarans, it was both a warning and an invitation. They realized the truth with startling clarity. The galaxy believed them extinct. No one expected their return. And in that mistake lay opportunity. Where others might have cautiously revealed themselves, Solara did not. Their leader saw a chance to seize destiny with their own hands. In the shadows of their star, fleets were built, not of exploration, but of conquest. Factories roared, asteroids were carved into mobile stations, and training camps filled with citizens who had been prepared for this moment all their lives. For the first time in centuries, the people of Solara looked outward. The galaxy would learn that humanity was not gone, not broken, and not to be underestimated. A lost colony was about to return, and it would not ask for permission. The first hints of Solara's return did not come with fanfare, but with silence. In a remote sector of the Orion Reach, mining drones belonging to a minor alien guild vanished. At first, the guild masters assumed equipment failure or pirates. The region, after all, was close to unclaimed space. Replacement drones were dispatched. They, too, vanished, their last transmissions cut short by static and sudden darkness. Frustrated, the guild escalated. They sent a small fleet of prospecting frigates, armed lightly but sufficient for fending off raiders. Days later, the fleet transmitted a brief, frantic message before it too went silent. In the message, one sentence stood out, repeated 3 times before the signal collapsed. Unknown human vessels, heavily armed, approaching fast. The words spread like wildfire across subspace channels. Human vessels? Such a thing was impossible. The only recognized humans lived on Earth and a handful of scattered colonies, and none had the power to destroy fleets with ease. Many dismissed the claim as misidentified raiders, but others, those who remembered old legends of vanished expeditions, whispered that perhaps the impossible had become real. When the Guild demanded compensation from the Galactic Council for its lost assets, the Council reluctantly dispatched an observation cruiser. The cruiser entered the region cautiously, its crew on edge. For 2 days, nothing unusual appeared. Then, without warning, space itself seemed to ripple. A formation of dark, angular ships emerged from the shadows of an asteroid belt. The cruiser hailed them expecting pirates. Instead, a crisp, commanding voice spoke in Galactic Standard. "This is the fleet of the Sovereign Union of Solara. You are trespassing in our system. Withdraw immediately." The Council cruiser's crew froze. The name meant nothing to them, yet the word Solara carried a weight that stirred vague memories of lost records. The captain attempted to open dialogue, requesting identification codes recognized by the Council. The reply came swiftly. "We recognize no authority beyond our own. Solara is sovereign. Leave or be destroyed." The cruiser retreated, shaken. Its scans had revealed alarming details. These were not jury-rigged pirate craft. The Solaran ships were war-ready with layered armor and weapon signatures far more powerful than their size suggested. Even more disturbing, the Solaran fleet maneuvered with uncanny precision, responding to the cruiser's every movement before it was made. The Council now faced a mystery, a human faction, long hidden, not only alive, but fielding fleets capable of challenging recognized powers. News leaked almost instantly. Across the galaxy, speculation exploded. Traders in the market spoke of a hidden human empire rising from the ashes of obscurity. Military strategists debated how such a force could have developed unnoticed. And among the younger, smaller species, hope flickered. If a lost colony could defy the great powers, perhaps they too could escape the long shadow of the empires. Meanwhile, in Solara, the return had already begun. The Solaran leadership, a council of elected commanders and governors, declared their emergence as a deliberate act. They had no intention of entering the galaxy as beggars seeking recognition. Instead, they would arrive as equals or superiors. Their first act was to lay claim to the system they called home. Every asteroid, planet, and moon was declared sovereign Solaran territory. Any intrusion would be met with overwhelming force. To demonstrate their resolve, they seized control of a neighboring star system claimed by no major power but used as a mining hub by several guilds. Solaran fleets entered without warning, overwhelming the lightly armed defenses. Within days, they had fortified the system's key stations, converted mines into weapons platforms, and raised their banner above the central world. The message was clear. Solara had returned, and they were not asking for recognition. They were demanding it. The galaxy had seen many uprisings, but this was different. This was not rebellion or piracy. It was the return of a people thought extinct, hardened by isolation, declaring themselves not as survivors, but as conquerors. The Council's cruiser returned with its report, and the galaxy held its breath. A new power had stepped into the light, wearing a human face, and nothing would ever be the same again. The council chamber had not buzzed with such intensity in decades. Representatives from every major power filled the vaulted hall, their voices overlapping in confusion, disbelief, and fear. The report from the observation cruiser had been verified 3 times. No errors, no fabrications. The Sovereign Union of Solara was real, and it was human. Some delegates scoffed, insisting the so-called Solaran fleet was nothing more than an elaborate trick. Perhaps pirates had stumbled across old Earth designs and repurposed them. Others were less certain. The descriptions of Solaran maneuvers and the eerie precision of their fleets unsettled even the most hardened skeptics. Unknown human vessels, the cruiser's log had stated. The phrase became a mantra, whispered through corridors of power and markets alike. The galaxy's news networks seized on the story. Holo programs replayed the last moments of the lost mining frigates, cutting to speculative renderings of sleek, human warships. Analysts argued endlessly. Could this Solara truly be a remnant of humanity's earliest colonization attempts? If so, how had it endured alone for so long? And more importantly, what did it want now? In the outer systems, where the great powers held little sway, the rumors spread faster than official statements. Merchants told tales of Solaran fleets that could tear apart armadas in minutes. Smugglers claimed to have seen humans wielding weapons no alien could comprehend. Miners whispered that Solara had discovered technologies forbidden by galactic law, and that their ships were guided by something more than human hands. Among the smaller, younger civilizations, the whispers grew into something else, inspiration. If a forgotten colony, cut off for centuries, could rise and seize control of a solar system, then perhaps they too could throw off the chains of the larger empires. The story of Solara became more than a rumor. It became a spark. Back on Solara, the leaders watched these developments with satisfaction. They had counted on confusion. They had counted on fear. And they had counted most of all on the arrogance of the great powers, who would argue among themselves while Solara solidified its position. Admiral Kalen, one of the senior commanders of the Solaran fleet, stood before the Council of Governors and outlined the next steps. The galaxy doubts us. Good. Doubt is the ally of those who prepare. While they argue, we expand. Our foundries are already producing warships at full capacity. The system we seized last month is being fortified. By the time the Council decides whether to send envoys or fleets, we will be ready for either. The governors, representing each of Solara's worlds and stations, nodded in grim agreement. They were not eager for open war, but they understood their reality. To hesitate would be to invite annihilation. To act decisively would force the galaxy to treat them as equals. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council, the divisions deepened. The Zeran Dominion demanded immediate military intervention, arguing that allowing Solara to entrench itself would destabilize trade routes. The Vayari Accord counseled diplomacy, suggesting that the Solarans might be brought into the council peacefully. Smaller delegations watched in silence, wary of aligning too soon with either stance. Behind closed doors, fleets began to mobilize. Patrol routes shifted. War games were simulated. The galaxy was preparing for confrontation, even if no one yet dared admit it openly. And still, the rumors grew. On fringe colonies, children played games where they pretended to be Solaran warriors, standing against the empires, Traders painted the Solaran banner on their ships, hoping it would bring luck. In cantinas and ports, the phrase "Solara rises" became a toast whispered with both awe and unease. The galaxy had always been a place of order, of established powers maintaining careful balance. But with Solara's sudden return, that balance was faltering. No one could predict what the humans would do next. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt the tremor of something new, an uncharted future, and at its center, humanity, reborn in fire and iron. The galaxy had seen colonies before, lost ones rediscovered, struggling settlements begging for aid, even ambitious outposts that grew into modest powers. But Solara was none of these. Solara was something entirely different. When the first council envoys finally breached the nebula and requested an audience, they expected desperation disguised as confidence. Instead, they found a civilization that had no need to pretend. The Solaran capital, a sprawling world city carved into the crust of their harshest planet, radiated both ingenuity and resilience. Towering spires rose above shielded valleys, their surfaces layered with solar collectors and industrial scaffolding. Vast furnaces belched steam and smoke into the skies, but beneath the grit lay efficiency. Every resource harvested, refined, and used with almost brutal precision. To the envoys, it looked less like a city and more like a fortress that had grown into a nation. In their meetings, Solaran leaders explained little of their past, but revealed much of their strength. They had learned to thrive in scarcity. On worlds where others saw wastelands, they had drawn out metals, energy, and food. Their engineers had turned asteroid belts into shipyards, hollowing rock into armor plating and threading veins of circuitry through ancient stone. Their scientists had refined unstable fuels into controlled engines, pushing ships faster and harder than galactic law permitted. And then there were their fleets. The envoys were escorted past hangars where warships loomed like sleeping predators. The vessels lacked the polished elegance of council designs, yet their presence was undeniable. Heavy armor layered over angular hulls gave them the look of ships forged for endurance. Their weapon mounts bristled with rail cannons, plasma lances, and missile racks, many of which operated on principles outlawed in galactic treaties. Most unsettling of all was how these ships seemed to move, even while docked, subtle adjustments of turrets and thrusters as though anticipating threats before they appeared. It was then the envoys learned the truth. Solaran fleets were guided, not merely by human hands, but by artificial minds. In Solara, necessity had long ago stripped away hesitation. To survive endless raids by hunger, storms, and scarcity, they had turned to adaptive war programs. Artificial intelligences trained to predict enemy strategies, reroute power in combat, and even command entire squadrons when needed. To the Council, such programs were forbidden, relics of old wars that nearly destroyed civilizations. To Solara, they were indispensable partners. "Our machines do not replace us," Admiral Kalen explained to the envoys. "They serve alongside us. They think faster than we can, but they fight for the same cause. Every Solaran pilot knows their ship as family, because in truth, it is." The envoys reported back in hushed tones. Solara's strength did not come merely from technology. It came from culture. In Solara, every citizen was both worker and soldier. From youth, children learned engineering alongside marksmanship, navigation alongside tactics. Factories doubled as training grounds. Families treated service as both duty and honor. There was no divide between civilian and military life, because survival had never allowed such a luxury. The Council's analysts were horrified. A society so mobilized could not be reasoned with like other nations. Diplomacy worked on interests and concessions, but Solara's very identity was forged from unity in hardship. They would not surrender sovereignty nor trade strength for recognition. Back in the council chambers, panic spread. "They are a hammer," one delegate muttered, "and the galaxy is made of nails." Yet not all were fearful. Among smaller civilizations, admiration bloomed. Here was proof that survival against impossible odds could breed greatness, that a forgotten people with no allies and no aid could rise to challenge the empires. Some quietly sent envoys of their own, offering trade, technology, even alliances. Solara accepted little, but they listened. Every gesture of respect strengthened their legitimacy. Every whisper of admiration undermined the old powers. The message was clear, carried in every report, every rumor, every silent orbiting warship. Solara did not need recognition. It already possessed what mattered most, strength enough to take it. The galaxy now understood what it faced. Solara was not a relic of the past stumbling into the future. It was a blade sharpened by centuries of struggle, and it had only just been unsheathed. The galaxy's great empires could only watch Solara's rise for so long before someone acted. The first to move was the Dravari hegemony, a proud species whose empire bordered the newly claimed Solaran system. To the Dravari, Solara's defiance was an insult that could not go unanswered. They dispatched a fleet of 60 warships, each larger and more advanced than anything the Council had seen Solara field. Their admirals expected a swift campaign, an overwhelming show of force to remind these forgotten humans of their place. But Solara had prepared for this moment. When the Dravari fleet arrived, they found no frightened colony scrambling to defend itself. Instead, they entered a system transformed into a fortress. Asteroids had been hollowed and fitted with thruster arrays, now drifting into defensive formations. Stations bristled with cannons welded from salvaged mining equipment, crude but deadly. Even the planetary atmosphere shimmered with strange readings, as if the very skies had been altered for war. The Dravari commander laughed at the sight. "Scrap metal and desperation! Fire on sight!" The first salvo shattered several defensive stations. For a moment, it seemed the Dravari were right. Solara's defenses buckled under the onslaught, but then the trap was sprung. The asteroids began to move. Engines hidden within their cores ignited, sending entire fields of rock hurtling toward the Dravari ships. Some were destroyed with quick volleys, but others struck home, smashing into cruisers with unstoppable momentum. The Dravari formation, scattered, their precision broken. That was when the Solaran fleet emerged. Dozens of ships surged from the shadow of the inner planets. Smaller and less refined than their Dravari counterparts, they fought like predators freed from chains. Their adaptive AI-guided maneuvers predicted enemy fire, weaving through barrages with uncanny grace. Rail cannons spat slugs that tore through shields. Missiles, crude in appearance, exploded with devastating yields, shattering hulls in flashes of light. Still, the Dravari had numbers and firepower. They regrouped, focusing on one Solaran vessel at a time, grinding the humans down. For a moment, it seemed brute strength would prevail. Then the skies themselves turned against them. The strange atmospheric readings had not been deception. They were weapons. The Solarans had seeded their planet's upper layers with ionized particles and volatile chemicals. At a command, they triggered chain reactions that rippled through the atmosphere, producing storms of lightning and radiation. Dravari ships caught too low were ripped apart, their systems fried by storms they could not predict. The battle dragged on for hours, the void lit by fire and fury. In the end, the Dravari fleet, 60 strong, was reduced to fewer than a dozen battered survivors. The rest burned in Solara's skies or drifted as wreckage among the stars. Admiral Kalen broadcast a message across every channel, his voice calm but sharp as steel. "To those who would test us, Solara does not bow. We did not survive the void to be conquered. Remember this day before you send your fleets to die. The message echoed across the galaxy. For the Dravari, the defeat was humiliation beyond measure. Never in living memory had one of their fleets been crushed so decisively, least of all by a power they had dismissed as nothing more than a lost colony. For the Council, the implications were terrifying. Solara was not merely strong. They were cunning, resourceful, and willing to use tactics no one else dared. For smaller species, it was electrifying. If Solara could humble the mighty Dravari, perhaps no empire was untouchable. In the aftermath, Solara celebrated not with parades, but with rebuilding. Every citizen turned to labor, repairing ships, salvaging wreckage, and strengthening their defenses. To them, victory was not a triumph, but proof of survival. The galaxy marveled at their audacity. The Solarans simply returned to work. The clash of wills had ended, but the message lingered. Solara had shown its teeth, and the galaxy could not look away. The Galactic Council had not seen such chaos in generations. The crushing defeat of the Dravari fleet rippled through the political halls like a storm, and no voice could rise above the noise. The chamber, usually a place of careful formality, had devolved into shouting matches, delegates pointing claws, wings, and tendrils at one another as accusations flew. "The humans are destabilizing everything," shouted the Dravari representative, his scales flaring with rage. "They destroyed 60 ships of the hegemony as if they were nothing. If we allow them to expand unchecked, they will ignite a war that consumes us all." A Veery envoy raised, her delicate hands in calm rebuttal. "Your fleet attacked them first. What did you expect? Solara acted in defense of its home. Perhaps instead of blaming them, you should reconsider your arrogance." That statement drew gasps, but it reflected the unease spreading across the council. Some feared Solara's power, others admired it, and some secretly hoped to harness it. Behind the debates, advisors and intelligence networks fed streams of reports to their delegations. The Solarans were not just strong in battle, they were building alliances on the margins. Smaller civilizations, long ignored by the great powers, had begun sending envoys to Solara, offering trade in exchange for protection. Already, whispers told of colonies flying Solaran banners alongside their own, not out of conquest, but by choice. For the Council, the dilemma sharpened: war or diplomacy. If they declared war, they risked uniting Solara with disaffected minor powers, creating a conflict that could spiral across the stars. But if they chose diplomacy, they risked legitimizing Solara's sovereignty, allowing the humans to sit at the table as equals, a notion many elder species could not stomach. The Council's High Speaker, an ancient being of the Althanai species, finally rose above the arguments. Her voice, deep and resonant, silenced the chamber. "Delegates, we face a choice that will shape our era. The Solarans are not like others we have rediscovered. They are not weak, nor begging for help. They are strong, united, and dangerous. To strike them now may destroy them, or it may awaken a fire we cannot extinguish. To welcome them may preserve peace, but it may also invite our own decline. Decide carefully, for the galaxy watches." While the council debated, Solara continued its work. From their perspective, the council's hesitation was a gift. Their shipyards roared with activity, converting wreckage from the Dravari fleet into new warships. Citizens volunteered for training, their numbers swelling the already vast reserves of militia. Factories on their captured system churned out weapons and supplies, preparing for the next inevitable conflict. Admiral Kalen stood with the Solaran Council of Governors, reviewing the galaxy's shifting responses. They hesitate. Good. Every day they argue, we grow stronger. But their fleets will not remain idle forever. We must be ready when their patience ends. Governor Elira, one of Solara's civilian leaders, leaned forward. We should also consider diplomacy. Fear serves us well now, but it cannot last forever. If we find allies among the smaller powers, we may not need to fight every battle alone. Kalen gave a rare smile. And so the galaxy splits between those who fear us and those who admire us. Either way, they cannot ignore us. That is victory. Enough, for now. Back in the council chamber, the debate stretched into days. The Dravari demanded vengeance. The Veyari pressed for dialogue. The Althanai urged patience. And all the while, smaller delegations whispered to one another, forming quiet coalitions that might one day break the council's rigid hierarchy. For the first time in centuries, the council could not see a clear path forward. Solara had upset the balance, and the galaxy was no longer predictable. The dilemma remained unresolved, but one truth was undeniable. Humanity had returned, and every choice the council made from this point on would revolve around them. The galaxy's future was no longer shaped by ancient empires alone. It now depended on a people once thought lost, hardened survivors who had risen from the void to claim their place among the stars. For weeks, the galaxy had speculated about Solara's intentions. Were they conquerors bent on expansion, or survivors defending their corner of the stars? Were they a threat to all, or a chance for something new? Rumors ran wild, but answers were scarce. The council's debates had stalled, smaller civilizations whispered in shadows, and fleets lingered on borders like wolves waiting for prey. Then, without warning, Solara ended the speculation. The broadcast began as a ripple of interference across communication networks, swiftly overriding channels from the inner core to the outer colonies. In ports, palaces, and mining camps, screens flared to life. The image that appeared was stark. A single figure, standing before the banner of Solara. She was introduced as Governor Elira, chosen by the council to speak for all Solarans. Her voice was steady, her tone measured, not desperate, not boastful, but commanding. "People of the galaxy," she began, "you wonder who we are. You call us lost, forgotten, impossible. Yet here we stand. We are the sovereign union of Solara, descendants of the first humans to leave Earth's cradle. Our ancestors were abandoned, cut off by storms and distance. For centuries we endured, without your aid, without your trade, without your protection. And in that crucible, we were forged." Her words echoed across worlds. The image of a human speaking with such authority carried weight far beyond the message itself. Humanity was known to the galaxy as clever, stubborn, and adaptable, but never as a power that could defy empires. "We do not come to ask for permission," Elira continued. "We claim what we have built. Solara is sovereign. The system we hold is ours by right of survival and strength. We will defend it against all who seek to take it, as we defend it against the Dravari fleet. Those who doubt our resolve need only remember their fate." On Dravari worlds, her words cut like knives. Citizens whispered about their fleet's destruction, while leaders seethed at the humiliation of being named so openly. But Elira was not finished. Her gaze sharpened, her voice hardening. "Let the galaxy know this truth. Humanity does not fade. You thought us gone, but we endured. You may fear us, you may resist us, but you will never erase us. Solara rises not as beggars, not as rebels, but as equals. And to those who would stand with us, we offer friendship, trade, and protection. To those who would threaten us, beware. We survived the void. We will not fall to you." The transmission ended with the Solaran banner filling. The screen, a sunburst carved in iron, framed by the stars. The effect was immediate and profound. On core worlds, officials called emergency meetings, fearing uprisings among their colonies. In the outer rim, cheers erupted in taverns and markets as smaller species raised cups to the humans who defied the council. Merchants began painting Solaran symbols on their ships, hoping it might shield them from pirates or win favor at Solaran ports. The council itself was thrown into chaos. Diplomats demanded explanations. Military leaders urged immediate retaliation, arguing that allowing such a bold broadcast would embolden every dissatisfied faction in the galaxy. Yet others urged caution. Solara had not threatened conquest, only defense. To strike them now might unite countless smaller powers behind the humans. And among the ordinary people of the galaxy, something unexpected began to spread. Admiration. Stories of Solara's endurance became legends overnight. Children in far-flung colonies pretended to be Solaran pilots. Workers in mines and factories whispered that if humans could rise from nothing, so could they. The message had been clear and simple, but its impact was immense. Solara was no longer just a rumor, no longer just a military victory. It was a symbol. Humanity had spoken, and the galaxy was listening. The galaxy held its breath. For the first time in centuries, the careful balance of power was unraveling. The great empires, long accustomed to dictating the pace of history, now found themselves reacting instead of controlling. And the cause of this upheaval was not some ancient menace, not a newly awakened species of unimaginable power, but humans, a lost colony that had refused to die. In the weeks following Governor Elira's broadcast, the consequences spread like ripples across water. Small civilizations that had endured under the shadow of larger powers began sending envoys to Solara. They came cautiously at first, wary of rejection, but Solara welcomed them. Trade agreements were signed. Technical knowledge was exchanged. In some cases, alliances were quietly forged, promising protection in exchange for loyalty. The galaxy's forgotten peoples had found a champion, not because Solara promised mercy or equality, but because it proved that even the weak could grow, strong when forced to endure. Meanwhile, the great powers struggled to decide how to respond. The Dravari hegemony licked its wounds, nursing humiliation, but unwilling to commit to another reckless attack. The Vayari Accord pushed harder for diplomacy, urging that Solara be brought into the council before another war began. Other empires fortified their borders, wary that Solara's influence might spread to their own colonies. In council chambers, the debates raged endlessly. To recognize Solara would mean admitting a new power had risen outside their control. To deny Solara risked igniting a conflict that could fracture the entire council. Each passing day of indecision only strengthened Solara's position. On Solara itself, life continued with the same relentless determination that had carried them. Through centuries of isolation, shipyards expanded, asteroid mines dug deeper, and training grounds filled with citizens preparing for whatever came next. But amid the industry, there was also pride. For the first time, the people of Solara were not only survivors, they were leaders, shaping the course of history beyond their hidden system. Admiral Kalen watched from the command deck of the Solaran flagship as fleets maneuvered in precise drills. His voice carried the weight of hard-earned confidence as he addressed his officers. The galaxy no longer doubts we exist. Now they will learn what that means. Our task is not merely to survive anymore. It is to lead. Every ship we build, every alliance we forge brings us closer to that future. Governor Elira, speaking to her council, echoed his resolve. We will not conquer for conquest's sake. We will expand because survival demands it. The galaxy has forgotten what it means to fight for existence. We will remind them. And indeed, reminders were everywhere. The wreckage of the Dravari fleet still orbited Solara's worlds as silent monuments to human resilience. Stations raised banners of iron and sunburst. Outlying colonies, once resigned to the rule of distant empires, now whispered of Solara as a beacon of change. Even among the elder races, private doubts stirred. If Solara had risen from nothing in a few short centuries, what would it become in a few more? If this was the strength of one lost colony, what might happen if others were still out there, hidden in the galaxy's vastness, waiting to emerge? The galaxy was no longer certain of its future. And in that uncertainty, Solara thrived. In the end, the Solarans did not need to declare war, nor did they need to conquer vast swaths of territory. Their existence alone was enough to shift the balance. They had proven that humanity, once thought fragile and fleeting, was capable of reshaping destiny itself. As fleets patrolled the borders and envoys whispered in shadowed halls, one truth echoed louder than all others. A new era had begun. An era where humans were no longer scattered settlers or minor players, but a force that the galaxy could neither ignore nor contain. The lost colony had returned, and it would not fade. The galaxy had underestimated humanity once. It would not make that mistake again.